Oh, if you want to be like super serious for a second, I genuinely judge people on age more than anything else.
Really? But don't you hate it when people do that to you?
Yeah, does it go both ways? Do you judge young people for being too young and stupid?
No.
Oh, you just judge old people.
And you know what? I mostly judge old white people, if you want to be more specific about
Oh,
it.
okay.
I just assume that they're racist, which makes them lesser.
Well, you know who was an old white racist person?
Who?
Was Viggo Mortensen in the Green Book. I don't even remember his name. Oh, yeah, the lip.
Tony.
Tony Vallelonga.
How can you forget a name like
Tony.
If you're gonna I'm an Italian boy in the Bronx. What's my name? I don't know. I guess it's fucking Tony.
He just seemed like a character in Fallout New Vegas. I was like, what's the stereotype we could play up? I have an idea. Mob guy. He's not a mob guy, though. He made it very clear. He's
Yeah.
The movie told me he's a good man.
He works at the Copacabana, and then in the days I go get the Capricol down in the deli. God, it's like
Why are
as
we
soon
here?
as the guy's name says Tony, I'm like, he's in The Sopranos. And then spoiler, the real person was in The Sopranos. Fucking crazy.
Wait, really?
Yes. Did you not watch after the credits?
No.
Did you not watch?
Well, I watched like
it's weird to talk about the very end of the movie before we even introduced the movie or anything, but like,
I mean, I did, but maybe I just wasn't. Was there a man named Tony Soprano?
no, Tony Vallelonga,
Oh, was
who the movie was based off of.
that? Uh-huh.
The real Tony was in The Sopranos. It said that at the end of the movie.
Oh, really? I missed that part.
Yeah, it gave like one of the based on a real story
Yeah,
/ documentary slideshows about
I
like the
saw
real
that.
people.
I guess I just missed that little bit of text.
Yeah.
So he was a mobster.
I don't know.
In the movie? Okay, we're getting at why are we here, Coral?
We are here. Well,
We're here to talk about the best picture winner, which was
Green Book. We committed ourselves before the Best Picture Oscar went out that we were going to watch whatever won, which was a bad idea because it wasn't really a good Oscar race in general. But we got stuck with Green Book. So
probably
Better
the
or worse
worst.
than Black Panther?
I'd rather watch Black
Yeah,
Panther.
that has good music.
I feel like I would have struggled. I feel like it was the second worst option.
Why, Joey? Did
Why?
you watch the Green Book?
Fuck!
What about Black Klansman? That would have been an interesting combo.
Isn't that supposed to be funny?
It's not really funny.
Oh.
It has a couple moments, but it's not very funny.
It's not a feel-good movie.
Well, I guess all
Not
of
like the way
movies-
Green Book is. Green
Yeah.
Book is a textbook feel-good movie.
Well, we did watch the Oscars together. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a moment. Coral was hosting an Oscar party, and Nick and I were both over there. We were minimally dressed up. We were eating pizza. There were other friends there, and it got to the end of the night, and they were going to announce Best Picture. And we knew ahead of time that we said, "Hey, on the podcast, we're just going to do whoever wins Best Picture."
No matter what.
No matter what. So as soon as it gets announced, Green Book, I don't know exactly what Coral said, but she confused multiple people in the room because I don't think you were reacting to the actual pick. You were reacting to this right here, right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember what I said.
You knew that you had committed a heinous crime
Yeah.
and you were about to pay.
Yes.
What is this, Nick? What are we doing? Why are we here? Who are we?
Well, I'm Nick Limone, and I'm here to talk about the Green Book. But joining me today, we have...
I'm Coral.
Were you also not sure if he was going to introduce you or if you were
Yeah.
going to do it
I don't
yourself?
like
Gotta let it go.
I don't like it when podcast people say the others' names because I like associating the voice with the name. Just
I
because
I
I'm like,
think
oh,
that's
okay.
good. The only counter if there would be like a definitive host, maybe.
I mean, it floats around where it's up in the air, man.
No, like we don't have that, but I think you're right. I just wasn't sure. You know, we're five and we don't have the. I'm Joey, by the way. I hate movies.
Yeah, you're the hater of
that's-
movies.
The podcast that you're listening, it's called a Joey Hates Movies.
And
so.
Joey has seen at this point what 6 movies, 7?
This is number 5.
This is number 5. Joey's seen 5 movies, and this is the 5th one.
This is officially the most movies I've seen in a calendar year. In I want to say 6 or 7 years.
Oh man, that's wild. What an eclectic selection too. Like it's all
Yeah.
over the map.
It's all over the place.
So Green Book.
So Green Book. We're here to talk about Green Book, and thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you for going on this journey with us.
I think we typically start this off by asking you, Joey, what you thought this movie would be about.
We do. So I feel like Green Book being in the zeitgeist in Oscar season
Yeah.
is something that I naturally garnered more information about, because it was definitely it was in pop culture in the very recent past. So I knew that the movie was about some white dude driving around some black dude, and some people were racist.
Yeah, that's pretty
And in
good.
the South.
Yeah.
And the black dude played music.
That's pretty good. And
Yeah.
This is one of the rare instances where I had a very similar idea of what the movie was about with Joey, but I think that my idea was like, oh, it's going to be a movie, like, if nothing else, it's going to be a movie about how a white guy is realizing he can't stay in the same places as a black man would be able to, because he has this Green Book. And then, from a certain perspective, I'm like, oh, it's going to be interesting because I've never had to use a Green Book because I'm just a Mexican guy living in 2019. So, seeing it in the context of the time, I'm like, oh, that might be kind of interesting. Like, you see what was in the Green Book and see how it all unfolds. So, all right, whatever. I'll check this out. That's not what this movie was about.
No, I'm sorry. No, that's not what the movie was about.
It was not a time capsule.
Another fun bit of tidbit. This is the first movie we've done that none of us have seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're kind of all coming in here with fresh eyes.
But Coral, why is it that you and I, I would say self-proclaimed movie aficionados, fans of cinema, why has Green Book not been one of the movies that we have what's up with this?
I stay away from. There were, first off, so many controversies around this movie the second it came out, and none of them made it seem like the storytellers were very competent at delivering the story they wanted to tell. And it just seemed to me like a very by the books, kind of white savior-y, feel good about racism because it happened in the past kind of movie.
Yeah, and it's been solved.
Yeah. So I wasn't really interested in it.
Yeah, fair. And to me, yeah, same boat, for sure. But in all actuality, what is Green Book about?
So Green Book takes place in 1962. It is about an Italian New Yorker named Tony who finds himself in need of work when the club he's a bouncer at closes for renovation for a few months. Esteemed African-American pianist Dr. Donald Shirley hires him as a driver for his upcoming tour to the South. Initially, the two struggle to see eye to eye, Tony's working-class simplicity and abrasiveness clashing with Shirley's more refined seriousness. But however, through experiences together navigating the South, they cultivate a mutual respect and understanding, even eventually maybe a friendship. And they all learn about racism and go have Christmas, and credits roll.
And then you feel better.
Yeah.
And you go to bed. So, okay, this movie. If you look, if I did my best to divorce everything surrounding the controversy of the movie and just looked at the movie for what it is, I think that in script form, as it stands, I think it is an okay movie. I think that it is a by the book, designed min-max to hell. This is how you write a screenplay. This is how you have a character arc. Things happen, and a character changes a little bit by the end of the movie. Roll credits. Hey, you have a good character introduction for both characters. Yeah, sure. I think at a surface level, I think it's fine.
It would be really easy to teach in a film class and have a 101, have a student write a what is a character arc, how does someone change, what are themes and motifs.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's particularly interesting, but I think that it's okay, the ingredients are here. But to me, I think the biggest problem I have with this movie is that it commits this. It's very hard to describe without getting into my deep-rooted Protestant upbringing. But it's the idea of a small sin that it's planting the seed of this. It's a very sinister and evil seed of, oh, well, this is something that was taken care of in the past. And you know what? Maybe I might have some prejudices I hold against some people, whatever the color might be. But you know what? By the end of it, I feel like it's fine because you know what? It all works out. Like I think it comforts you into thinking that you don't actually have to do anything about prejudices you might have. And I just it's like a warm blanket that slowly suffocates you. And I think it is inherently evil in that respect.
Yeah, I felt similarly, and this idea that all racism or other isms can be solved simply through exposure and getting to know someone, and that's all we need. That's all the world needs to feel better, and that feels really nice, and that's a comforting idea. But at the end of the day, that's not always true. There are plenty of insidious people in this world who will still be racist even if they know black people for a month. Like, and it's just not responsible to pretend that all you have to do is make a friend and everything will get solved.
It feels childish in that respect. Like you failed to look like it's something that you would expect like a middle schooler or high school to be like, this is a story about an unlikely friendship. And I was like, okay, well,
How to Solve Racism by Joey in the 5th grade.
like it's the idea that this is at a surface level. Like, okay, I get what you're going for here. But I think if because Spike Lee is so, I think, inherently attached to this movie in some ways that suck for him, like, he confronts racism in a way that's not pretty. It's not neat, but it is the way we experience racism on a day-to-day basis. In movies like The Green Book, things always work out. But in Do the Right Thing, sometimes people just can't get along. And it's the idea of how you act when you can't get along. It's like, that's where there's some truth. And that's what I'm interested in unpacking. Not this like neat little bow on top of this feel-good story. But I think Coral and I are venting a little bit about this. Joey, what did you think of Green Book?
Top level down. I feel like it was a movie made for my dad, who is a racist old white man. Mm-hmm. Really tying together these themes to feel better about racism.
Yeah.
Or like it felt like such a paint by numbers example and such an oversimplification of a massive issue in our culture that we deal with every day.
Yeah.
It's just pitiful to I can see that sometimes there's like elegance and beauty in brevity and simplifying something into its most distilled form, and it feels like that's what they wanted to do here in a sense. If you're giving them, like a good benefit of the doubt, they just wanted to distill this problem and this story to have like a feel good moment, but really it just comes off as like insultingly oversimplified.
Yeah. So we're not overreacting in our knee-jerk reactions to the movie, it seems like.
No, and I know that like this is probably the way for most of us, but I was definitely primed before this movie with similar beliefs like this because of stuff I read about the movie and stuff I listened to about the movie and just the conversation surrounding it. So, I mean, I feel like all that media I consumed is correct, but I definitely feel like I came in with a loaded gun looking for this stuff. I already hear that it has these problems, and then I'm just identifying them, being like, oh yeah, that NPR piece I listened to sure was right. So it felt icky. I feel like there's a world where if you try and extract the race relation issues out of there, it could be a fun buddy movie.
Okay.
Do you not agree with that?
I mean, it's again, this is not a criticism of your take on it because there's not really too much to unpack because I think it is so surface level. At a certain point in an analysis of it, you are kind of just like sifting through a puddle to some extent. But I think that it's a friendship based on race, and that's it. Like, it's just, that's the only reason why they met, and that's the only reason why they talk to each other, and it doesn't really feel like a friendship.
Yeah. And I think when you remove the kind of weighty subject matter of, race relations from this movie, there's not, the rest of it isn't that good. There were so many just bad Tony Soprano impressions. There's I don't know why there was a 2-second hot dog eating contest in the first 5 minutes that mattered not at all. Like, there were so many just
Because one
weird
of the notes that I
things.
wrote is
Dude,
I wrote multiple notes about the movie not being funny, and then I finally just wrote, "Does the comedy come from his appetite?"
he's like Brad Pitt in Ocean's 11. He's just always eating something. I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Now, let's start at the top.
Do you want to start at the top?
We meet Tony, the club bouncer. What's the name of the club, Joey?
the Copacabana.
The Copacabana.
At the Copa.
He's basically a glorified
Copacabana.
bouncer here. And this is where we get a character introduction. And again, this is going back to script writing 101, where you're like, how do we make a quick, good first impression for our protagonist character? A movie called Green Book. How is our protagonist, the white Italian guy, in a movie called Green Book? How are we introducing him? And it is, I genuinely think it is a good character introduction because it signals a couple of things. It shows, one, he's a tough dude because there's a scene that gets caused in the club that he has to kind of take care of as one of the bouncers. And he's a big and he's a heavy guy, and all of his punches pack a serious punch, not to be redundant. But in addition to not only being just dumb and strong, like, it's implied that he's just dumb and strong, but he does kind of showcase some street smarts in that he kind of orchestrated this stealing of a very important person's hat so that he could potentially get future jobs, which that's fun. That's a street smart guy who knows how to throw a punch. Okay, I get who this character is. I'm on board. And he can also put away 26 or 28 hot dogs.
What a guy.
He has an appetite. And he has a family who he loves very much. He has a wife, and does he have a kid?
He has two
Yeah.
kids.
He has 2 kids. And
He's getting laid off.
and
The Copacabana's closing for renovation. What's he going to do to make money? Tony rents due.
since he caused the scene, now it's being investigated. So he's going to have to lay low. And, he eats all those hot dogs so he can make a quick $50. But when he goes home, him and his old pals, his wife's family, who are by extension his family, they're just watching the game. They're having a good time like boys do on a Sunday. But then he sees someone in his kitchen. He sees 2 people in his kitchen, and his wife's talking to him. There are 2 black men in his kitchen, and immediately oh, this is where we're going to find out he doesn't like black people. And sure enough, his wife, who is very kind, played by, what's her name? She's the one from Freaks and Geeks, right?
Linda Cardellini.
Linda Carlini, also in the upcoming film Curse of La Llorona, another movie she probably shouldn't be in. But that being said, she extends hospitality to the 2 black men who are in her home. I think they're fixing something. They're like maintenance people. And she gives them something to drink. And this small interaction of Tony going over to empty glasses that the black men drank from, I think just ruined any potential of oh, okay, you're racist, but
Subtlety.
he was vile. He didn't say anything to them, but I can't think of a more piece of shit moment than someone throwing away a couple of glasses because 2 black men drank from him. Whoa, what a way of portraying racism in a way that's not overtly mean, but it's dude, it's going to be hard for me to like you after this.
Yeah. Even the way that moment was shot was so jarring because the whole intro, when he's working at the club, you have this very sweeping camera movements where it's clearly beautifully choreographed to move through the club and follow him, and everything feels very intentional and lovely and grand. And then you get to this moment and it is shot with a really a long zoom lens, and it's really shaky, and it's so voyeuristic and threatening and weird, and it just felt so instantly bad. It choreographed
what he was gonna do before he did it, which I guess to some extent is like a choice.
Yeah, it was definitely intentional, but it felt like it doubled down on how terrible he was being right
Well, you gotta
away.
make him as terrible as possible, so that when the white man eventually wins at the end, it's more of a rise, right?
But this is a moment specifically that I think is so vile in this character's life. Like I think the only worst thing he could have done was participated in a lynch mob at this point. Because like, dude, that's a shitty thing to do. And I'm like, okay, I hope that if nothing else, by the end of this movie, his wife, who seems like a good person, is going to confront him about throwing away glasses. But it never comes up. She
No.
finds the glasses in the trash, but she never confronts her husband about his racism.
Yeah.
That is the one thing that this movie, I'm like, oh, so you're not a good wife. You're not a good person. You just let this happen. What's
Yeah.
going on in this movie?
And like, not to jump too far ahead, but even at the end, she waits for her husband to be out of earshot to thank Dr. Shirley for helping him be less of a racist piece of shit. It's such a weird
But then,
response.
But
Like,
then we,
are we supposed to be like,
Oh, she's a
cool 'cause
good
she's
one.
not racist?
yeah.
Because you like, yeah, sure, she's objectively less racist than her husband, but like, that's just is that just playing into different time period stereotypes, where like the woman is lesser now and like won't stand up to the man?
My theory is that she is the type of person who this movie is made for.
Yeah.
But then there's our second character. I wouldn't really call him a protagonist, but
Well, they don't in the Oscars, right? Because he won supporting actor,
Yeah.
which seems weird because
well, the movie's called Green Book. What's going on?
No black people touch the green book in this movie. It is passed around between several different white people exclusively.
But we meet Dr.
catch.
we meet Dr. Shirley for the first time shortly after this heinous interaction with Tony and the black men in his home. And I got to say it was again, I think another very good by the book textbook character introduction in that, hey, what's this doctor doing above a concert hall? What's going on? So Tony goes to interview for a position that, like, oh, this is for a doctor as like a bodyguard thing. I'm interested. I'll be a driver for a doctor. Cool. It's above a concert hall. Something's up. What's going on here? Am I in the right place? But then you go to find out, again, through an interaction with another person of color, this time someone who is Indian, I believe. And again, his racism extends beyond black. It is all people of color, it appears, in this movie. But yeah, after a very uncomfortable encounter with a butler to Dr. Shirley, he meets Shirley. And he is played by Mahershala Ali. And Dr. Shirley is I think eccentric is appropriate here. He's a renowned regal man of wealth, and he likes a lot of the finest things in life. He is very well-spoken, I would say also soft-spoken, and in every way, shape, and form, the exact opposite of Tony. And again, back to the screenwriting 101, we have our foil for our protagonist, the character who's going to be the predicament he has to deal with throughout the course of the movie. What did you
I
guys think?
hate Tony for being like, oh, my name's on the list. Of course my name's on the list because my name's Tony. What the
Again, I think that it is reinforcing once again the idea that he's good at being
uneducated?
He's good at being street smart. He's good at bullshitting people, which is like, okay, that's fine, you know.
But he was on the list. He just didn't give his name. Like, what a fuckwad.
I don't think his name was on the list.
It
though.
was.
Was it?
Yeah.
I thought it was a different Tony that was on the list.
It was a different Tony. Yeah, he just pretended to be that Tony.
He went
That,
to Tony Valentine. No, because
that was the reveal that happens later in the movie.
well, Dr. Shirley directly says that he heard all the references, specifically wanted him. So why would he not be on the list?
Yeah.
True. Maybe that's just a bad writing bit. But I could have swore that the person who also shared the name Tony was also someone worthy of respect to some extent. But what was your guys' What are your thoughts on the first encounter between the white man and the black man in the movie?
Even watching the rest of the movie and then going back and thinking about that scene, his like sitting on a throne that was a level over him seemed too aggressive. Like a lot of it didn't fit with the character I got to know throughout the movie, I felt like.
I felt the exact same way.
I completely agree, and I think that was done on purpose so that you can still side with Tony in their interaction, because you want Tony to succeed. Because the Dr. Shirley,
He's got a family to feed. He needs a job. The only thing stronger than racism is money.
I would argue that even though Dr. Shirley does undergo some change in the movie, I'd argue that it's not authentic, nor is it genuine. And I think that for the most part, he's the same person throughout the movie. Without any weird script doctoring happening where it's like, oh, we need to make this guy better. I genuinely think they make him look like a villain in the beginning. Not a villain, but someone who you're supposed to root for Tony to kind of go against and succeed and beat to some extent, because every scene is driven by a conflict to some extent. It could be just two people talking about getting a job in this instance. And we want Tony to succeed. So to do that, we have to make the character who really is deserving of all the sympathy, because he is a black man in a period where he's got everything going against him. It just seems like, okay, we gotta level the playing field here a little bit for our protagonist. So it feels disingenuous from that setup. But Tony, again, through his ingenuity and his hard work ethic, he pawns some things. It's tight for money, but you know what? He loves his family and he's gonna make it work. And then luckily, he wakes up to a phone call from Dr. Shirley, who's willing to pay the rate that Tony had suggested before ultimately being dismissed. So he gets the job and he meets the band. It is a Russian man, and I forget the other man who he was.
George and Oleg are the two bandmates, or trio.
Yeah, they're the trio, and the journey begins from there. And then all the craziness happens.
Dude, cool cars.
Cool cars. Again, I do think period pieces like this are susceptible to being praised as like, oh, remember how great it was in the 60s? Like, look how cool everything was. Oh, man, look at the club. Isn't it so cool? Don't you just wish we could go back to this time?
No, I genuinely felt zero of that.
And
Do you think it was supposed to feel that way at all?
yeah, I think that's how they portray the world of the movie for sure.
Yeah.
Rolling Hills of America.
Yeah, it's looked at with a loving lens, and there's some beauty there. I'm not going to deny that for sure. I just think that there is implicitly, like, there are ties to the problems of this movie and the world that it was conceived in. And I'm not saying you can't like the world of the 1960s because of its style, its aesthetic, its music, and its just overall atmosphere, but you have to be able to recognize that it is inextricably linked to some very problematic
Jim
things.
Crow laws.
And that, again, stuff like that is stuff we encounter later in the movie. But our first interaction is watching Tony and Dr. Shirley interact in the car. Tony is driving the black man. Wow, what a turn of events. That's not how it usually happens. Isn't that wild?
It's like driving Miss Daisy, but backwards.
What a funny situation we found ourselves in.
Yeah.
But that's really, I do think that's where, if the movie has any magic, this is where the screenwriters want that magic to shine, is the interaction between the foils. And again, because Dr. Shirley is so well spoken, it does paint Tony in a pathetic light. Like, I wouldn't call Tony dumb. I don't think he's dumb. I think he's oblivious, and I think he's ignorant. But I wouldn't call him dumb. I just think he's not a well-learned.
I often use the word. I'm sorry, Cole.
I see what you're saying, but I feel like maybe part of it is not all of the dialogue was perfectly written. He says some absolute stupid shit that doesn't make any sense unless he's an absolute buffoon.
He does say some stuff that makes zero sense.
There's-
He misuses words.
And
blah, blah,
so,
blah.
I forget specifically the interaction, but I think Shirley says musical, and Tony's response is, "Huh? You mean like songs?" Like it is that level of just like absolute idiocy that I thought was. It didn't make any sense that he would be that dumb.
I often use the word dumb when really what I want to say is uneducated. But I feel like Tony is both dumb and uneducated.
That's fair. I will give that to you. He says some pretty dumb things in this movie.
Yeah, and it's just like, hey, I'm Tony. I got street smarts and I eat a lot. That's my character. Also, I'm racist.
And his street smarts are always, "I'm gonna punch you." Like that is almost every interaction that he navigates to safety. Is he just like smacks someone or punches them or threatens to?
Yeah.
You know, Tony
Which
would
is gotta
say
be
to that.
it.
He'd say, "Yeah, you do what you're good at." But I think
He's just dumb. He doesn't know which deer to start a letter with.
that's okay.
It's not okay. There's
is
no
okay.
world in which that's okay.
That is okay. But I think that moment that you're talking about specifically was the only moment I got a laugh when the Dr. Shirley basically says something. They're having some conversation and Tony misinterprets the words and then says something that he thinks the words meant. And Dr. Shirley's like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I meant." And it's like, "No, that's not what he meant. That's the joke."
Yeah, because you're still taking the piss out of Tony.
That's the only part that I genuinely laughed out loud at. But after that was it.
I wrote down KFC in Kentucky sounds like a bad writer's room.
Oh,
Like,
you
oh
think-
man, what are they going to do in the South? I don't know, fucking eat KFC. What if they eat it in Kentucky?
And I think that sparks one of the most interesting parts of the movie. Yeah,
What?
for the wrong reasons. Wouldn't it be funny if we had the white guy show the black guy how to eat fried chicken? What?
I think there's two sides to this coin. I do think that having Dr. Shirley like not be like he intentionally is not a stereotype of himself because he feels like that makes him lesser.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. To some yes. But I think all this does is just reinforce the notion that we can't like our protagonist in this movie at all.
You know, people love fried chicken.
And
It's
he-
fried chicken there. He's like, see, I told you they love fried chicken.
And you know what? I think that if we had this interaction and it didn't involve race, I think that if Monk was in the back seat of this car, I think I'd be more on board. And to some extent, Dr. Shirley is a Monk type character in that he is so clean, he is so neat. He wouldn't dream of eating food with his hands. Like it's like that level of like, oh, that's just not my thing. Like I like to use utensils. Fine. But I think that, again, when you tie it so heavily to race,
Yeah.
it excuses any magic that might have been there and just throws it out the window the way Tony does a chicken bone or the cup. But then Dr. Shirley makes him go drive back and pick it up because what a fun button to a scene that was terrible.
Yeah. And that whole chicken scene is like one note in this recurring thread where this racist white guy teaches Shirley about African American culture, the whole like teaching him about the music and all this stuff that I don't want to like dig too much into the fiction of the movie versus the reality, but everyone in Shirley's family has like aggressively said that this wasn't true, that he wasn't isolated or rejected or confused by African American culture in any way, and he was very close with his whole family, and they specifically said he'd absolutely had fried chicken before.
Are you telling me the
thought you were gonna go-
filmmakers lied?
I thought you were gonna go with he absolutely listened to Little Richie before. Because isn't it just an asinine thought that someone who's a PhD musician would have never
Yes!
listened to Little
Or
Richie?
Aretha Franklin.
Aretha Franklin.
And I think that whole that discrepancy between the actuality and the film is just the only reason that they would do that is to make this white character have a beneficial purpose in their friendship, because that is he didn't offer anything to their friendship if he didn't have this in his back pocket. But they needed something to make this friendship feel more balanced and feel like Tony was offering something to Shirley in a way that balanced the way Shirley was teaching Tony so much.
And that's a thread that comes up throughout the movie. You mentioned it with the music, and it taps into the idea that Dr. Shirley, his dilemma is that he feels as though he doesn't belong. And I think this is the only subplot in the movie, again, in the context of the fiction of the movie, again, independent from reality. I think the idea of someone who doesn't belong anywhere because they are, one, not black enough or not white enough, I think it's a good thread, but it is ultimately abandoned in probably 3 minutes of on-screen footage. Like, it's an interesting thread that just quickly gets abandoned. And
and it also gets counterpointed and like shut down by Tony. Like when they're complaining, when Doc and Simon went out in the rain, like Tony immediately like shuts him down.
It's a weird scenario for me, because I think out of all the things this movie has to say, that's the one that resonates with me, just because that's the one that's been kind of lobbed at me on occasion, like, oh, you're not Mexican enough.
Fucking guilty, dude.
What's going on there?
Dude, Nick, you're so whitewashed.
And that's the thing that kind of like is evocative to me. Like, okay, I can understand the dilemma you're going through, and I could see why that's difficult, because you feel as though you're torn between two worlds. But I think in the hands of a more talented writer, that could have been extrapolated into something that was just its own movie.
Yeah. Or a theme you would want to explore from the perspective of that character, not...
Like, do you mean the one that the movie called The Green Book should probably be about?
Yes.
Yeah, man, this movie, dude. I feel weird about it, though. I feel like I'm being overly critical in something that I think that is, again, divorced from fact and the truth of the situation surrounding this quote-unquote true story. I do feel like it is a well-made movie to some extent, but I feel like there's so many problems with it that, like, break the text. Like, there are some metatextual problems that severely hinder what should be like maybe not a good script, but a script that is like, oh, okay, this is functional.
Sure.
And this is weird to me, because I'm usually like, hey, if it's structurally a good thing, that's fine. But this is just one occasion where I can't let it slide. I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but why is this the movie that I feel this way about?
Because it's a movie that rests on the fact that, like, oh, we're telling an important story. We have a message to tell you, and we have something to teach you about reality, and we base this on a real story. And it's going to help with our current racist issues in our society. And, like, we're bringing this to you. And the act of making this movie just stomped all over a black man's legacy. And that's a really fucked up thing if you're trying to make a movie about representation and moving forward in racism, to just like throw someone under the bus, essentially, to do that. I mean, they didn't reach out to Shirley's family. Oh. It's awful. The more you start reading about the production of this movie and the reality of these two people versus what was portrayed on screen, it's awful. And if you are selling your movie on the premise that it's genuine and it is
based on a true friendship,
yeah, and delivering some meaningful message about race, those things are in conflict with each other, and that's important.
I read a very good piece, not to diverge too much, but I read a very good piece. I think it was from Time, I want to say, but they were just talking about how the racism of Green Book and Driving Miss Daisy are like driven by a capitalist friendship. And it was a fascinating unpacking how money drove the fact that these two people, the unlikely couple, were driven to friendship, and how money played a hand in every interaction that worked in this movie. And it was a pretty fascinating read. I'll definitely include it when we post the podcast.
I guess I could be racist now, but if I am, then I can't feed my family or pay rent. So I guess I'll try and not be racist so my kids can eat.
And I part of me is like, as someone who is I am not a person who is equipped to tell a story about a Green Book, about what it's like being a black man in the racist South. But I wonder, like, at this point, I'm kind of over the movie. So the question I have is, like, as someone who is not a black man, is there any validity to a storyteller who might have, again, a different perspective than most, but not a black man? Is there any validity in someone telling a story about the Deep South in a racist time? I'm just curious at this point. Like, what can be engaged with in this era? Because I know a couple of things that I want to call to directly. Like, there's a book called Lovecraft County, what it is essentially the Green Book, but not whitewashed or sanitized. It is a black man writing about venturing through the racist South during the time of Jim Crow laws, but it's also adhering to something that came before in the form of Lovecraft, who is a famously racist person, and it is combating all of the racism that H.P. Lovecraft put forth into the world, but doing it through the context of a black man. And it is one of my favorite books that came out, I think, 2017. But, like, is there room for stuff like that in an era where people just want to watch the Green Book?
Do people want to watch the Green Book? What were its box office sales?
I don't know. I
Like,
genuinely don't.
I-
But this is the movie. This is a movie that my parents saw.
Why?
Because they just like, hey, well, it won an award. I'm gonna go check it out. And that's
Fuck, I mean, that's why we watched it.
and that I think ties back to that sinister note that I was trying to touch on. Like, it is designed to appeal to the people who might not look into it as deeply as Coral does, as deeply as Coral does. Because I guarantee you, if my parents knew that they were just sold a lie, they would not be very happy about how the movie unfolded. Because they would just
Talk to
feel,
your parents about it?
no, I didn't know that about the movie. I genuinely didn't know. I purposefully didn't look it up because I didn't want to let that color my perception of how the story was told.
I would love. I mean, I say I would love to have my parents' thoughts after seeing the movie, or like even them viewing it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that I feel like I would just be disappointed by it.
Yeah.
And-
Also, real quick, worth noting, it did well in the box office. It passed 300 million.
Oh,
Is that
So
after it won an Oscar though? Like
It's
I wonder what it is
it's been
before.
re-released, but it was fine. It had a 23 million budget and it blew past that.
Tangentially related question. I think this is the first time that I've like sat down and thought about what Oscar bait is. For lack of a
Oh,
better
yeah.
buzzword.
this
Because,
is that.
You know, as someone who only loosely keeps up with the Academy, and over the last couple of years of their problems with inclusion, and I don't like normally just watch what wins Best Picture,
Yeah.
but I hear people talk about, oh, this movie's Oscar bait, and then I watch this and I feel like I have a better identifier of what that term means.
Yeah, it's a great example.
And I think historically, if you look back at most Best Picture winners, they are movies that you probably would have to look up what they're about, because I don't think that they would stand the test of time. There are movies that I think are quintessential Oscar bait, but aren't deserving of being looked upon in the future in any way that just seems meaningful. Like, why did this win? What's going on? And I think that's most Best Picture winners. Granted, there's some exceptions, but I think for the most part, 8 out of 10, they're like, what? Why did this win?
Yeah, I think a lot of Oscar winners walk this balance that is very time sensitive of making viewers feel like they're engaging in something really meaningful without demanding a lot of work. And where those two things kind of meet each other depends so much on, especially with a movie like this that's about racism, is so dependent on where the culture is specifically at the moment that you see it.
I mean, you can extrapolate that into like just American culture almost too.
Yeah.
I think
Be meaningful, don't do work.
one of the things that pains me about this movie is that I do think that the best thing it does is showcasing Tony in such an admirable light. Again, they tried and redeem him several times, like, oh, he's cool or whatever. But I do think that there is something about Tony that should rub you the wrong way. And I think that throwing away the glasses is like, that's it. That's the moment where you're like, oh, no, you were just terrible. But there's shades of that I see in my day-to-day life that I think like, oh, man, if only you understood it. If only you watch this movie to criticize it the way we have, because then you could see that there are shades of people like Tony in everyone's life who, you know, he never drops an N-bomb or anything like that.
His family does.
Yeah, but he doesn't. He all he does is he's a quiet racist.
But even that,
And I think that's the worst kind.
he doesn't use that word, but it feels like it just wasn't captured on film. Like it.
Yeah, you just missed it, right?
Yeah.
and I don't agree, and I don't disagree. But I think that the quietness of his racism is the thing that should be the most poignant about the movie. Like, this should be a textbook example of, hey, this is also just as bad as being vocally racist, but it's just ultimately lost.
I mean, ultimately, like, I mean, they do try and save Tony and, you know, show his arc as growing as a person. Because I guess if you continue on with the movie, for the people who were following, we were saying, you know, they do, Tony ultimately does, you know, not get fully paid because he doesn't do the last show, and they leave and they don't make it home on time. So like he's like, oh, it's okay. Like I sacrificed something for myself, you know, to do what's right.
Dude, but Tony's woke. He's cool about whatever relationship
He's
Dr.
not woke. The
Shirley wants to have. What a weird scene. He's like, hey man, I've been in a club. Sometimes what is going on?
He would,
in this
yeah.
movie?
It's. I don't believe that someone like Tony's character would be that accepting of that.
I totally agree. I'm like, what is this character you're presenting to me now? I don't believe how woke Tony is all of a sudden.
Yeah, there's a scene where Dr. Shirley is at the YMCA and is in the shower with another man, and Tony gets called because he gets chained up for being in the shower with another man. But
A white man.
a white man, yeah, that's a double sin.
Yeah. What a weird scene though for Tony to be
I
like.
had to look up
hey,
if like
man.
Dr. Shirley was like a noted homosexual or something, because it felt like at the time, just watching the movie, I'm like, oh, of course he's also gay. But yeah, he did come out in his life, which I feel like was a point not needed for the movie, but I guess part of their adventure and like a fun thing that they felt
Yeah.
to include.
Well, it's also part of the way to be like, hey, Tony's not so bad, right? What is this movie?
And all these scenes where Tony shows up to save the day, like, I mean, the whole movie made me feel like Tony is not the interesting person in this
No!
friendship. Tony is not the person I want to watch a 2-hour movie about. Like, I'm way more interested in Shirley's whole life, but we only see Shirley's life from the perspective of this idiot who's with him for a few months.
My favorite scene is when Tony's writing a letter to his wife, and then he picks up just a whole pizza.
Folded in half.
You can't tell me you've never done that before.
No, I've never done that.
I have, but that's only because we got uncut pizzas for the show.
Dude, what a scene though. Like,
The comedy comes from he's hungry all the time. That's it.
he's not hungry though. He's just slothful.
You really see the Shallow Hal director jump out at that moment.
Is that shallow?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, Shallow Hal, something about Mary. I think maybe
No.
movie 43 even, maybe?
Oh man. So you're telling me the director of Shallow Hal got an Oscar?
Yeah, man.
Anything's possible.
The structure of Shallow Hal seems pretty similar.
Man, this feels like a weird one-off episode of Joey Hates Movies where we're like not unpacking a movie more so we're like academically shitting on it. Like, this feels weird, but it's also very satisfying because that movie's really long. Like, it is way
Well,
longer than it needs to be.
Yeah.
It's such an experience, and I wonder if you know, I'm sitting here when we're doing this talk that is cathartic, and I'm genuinely enjoying. But I wonder if people tuned out because they're like, look at these fucking cucks.
What is
I don't wanna
bunch of
listen to these
social
cucks."
justice war? Like, I think that if you divorce any identity politics from this movie, you gotta admit there's some serious issues with like just the inherent theme of the movie and just the premise. Like they're so linked together that how can you not? You know?
There's a hand there, and there's a bunch of people who tore this down, exponentially more than we did.
Yeah.
With way better personal relations and stories, because none of us are, the people who are really being victimized here.
Yeah. None of us are black people. It's simple as that. But that being said, I think we can still, as people who are not black, offer insights into why.
We are people with introspection, which
Hey, I'm
Tony
a
is
person
not.
of color. I don't know about y'all,
Tony is not.
but I get an extra playing card.
Do you get? Yeah, you do. That's fair. You do. Do you think this makes me think about how many Tony-like people there are in the world, and not from a racism standpoint, but from a complete and utter lack of introspection standpoint. Is that just a common person who I never interact with because I'm in such a secluded circle in my community, in my workplace, in my friend group, that I don't deal with people who have zero introspection?
I think Tony's an extreme version of a pretty common person.
Yeah, for sure.
That's scary though. If Tony's a 9, and there's a lot of people who are 7s and 6s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's still kind of startling and concerning, and probably why we deal with a lot of the issues we dealt with today.
Yeah. Again, just to dunk on Tony a little bit more, there's a scene where he calls an Asian man a slur, and
What did he say?
immediately
Do you say Oriental?
no, he said the C word, like something in armor. But regardless, he uses a slur, a derogatory term, and then he's talking to another Asian barman, and it's again, I think
Got it.
it's used. I think it's another good example of there are tons of people like this in the world where they're very good at hiding their racism. Where he just finished calling someone a bad name, and then his next interaction with someone of that same race is it colors your perception of that interaction in a way that's very gross. Where you're like, you are less than me, I am more than you. Therefore, I don't need to say anything. And that's the only thing I took from man, Tony's just not winning anything in this movie in my eyes. It's how flagrant you can use one word, and the next second it's just oh no, this is just I'm gonna operate, but I just know I'm better than you.
Preach.
Yeah.
Do you think at the end of the movie, when ultimately Dr. Shirley goes and joins Tony's family for Christmas Eve because he's lonely and by himself and wants that company, do you really think Tony's family would be that accepting?
I don't think they were.
No.
I was expecting something bad to happen.
I think something bad did happen, but then they were just oh well, fuck, he's right here standing in front of us. We can't say anything to his face. All right. I think they had their terrible moment in their hesitation, because there is a moment of hesitation, and it's a very pregnant pause. And I think the fact that pause happens lets you know, hey, they're all Tonys. Am I crazy in that read of it where it's just oh, I get what you were trying to do. You were trying to make it look oh, are they going to be racist? But I think that in posing that question, all you did was just reinforce the fact that they're racist.
Yeah, I think that scene was set up to be Tony's decision to be welcoming is that small step you take to encourage widespread change. Because Tony welcomed him and introduced him in front of his racist family, that is the little nudge his whole racist family needs to become better people. And it's that whole movie encapsulated is little friendly nudges, and meeting people will help.
There it is. That's the moment the movie could have been just that. All right, I got it.
They never spent Christmas together. Shirley's whole family says Shirley never called him a friend. He was an employee that he fired after a year and a half. They did not have this relationship.
But
He got fired?
Yes, he was fired because he wasn't respectful. He refused to carry his bags. He refused to open the door. He refused to wear a chauffeur's uniform. So he was fired.
How do they say that this movie is based on a true friendship?
Because it was written by Tony's son, Tony's real life son.
Oh,
They didn't realize Shirley had relatives alive,
oh.
so they didn't talk to them.
Are you telling me history's only favoring the... Okay.
It's wild.
But the end of the movie makes you believe that they were friends until they died.
Yeah, well, they
there's
died
pictures.
months apart, so you know.
There was pictures.
There are pictures of them being old.
Ah!
Those post final scene true photos feel extra misleading now.
They are misleading. They're selling a lie.
I didn't know he was fired. That's so funny.
I want to see that scene.
Yeah. There's a much more interesting movie in this relationship than Green Book.
I want to know why Mahershala Ali agreed to be in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
He won an Oscar?
Maybe. I don't know, man. Yeah, man, I don't know. This movie's weird.
Do you think like in a couple of years you can be like, hey, do you regret that role?
That's the question I want
Does
any
someone-
journalist to ask. How do you feel about being in the Green Book? Like, man, there's just, oh.
Remember when Viggo Mortensen was doing a Q&A for this movie and he was trying to talk about how progressive things have changed since this time?
No!
He accidentally said the N-word.
This is real, Nick.
Yeah. He was saying, we don't say this anymore, and he just said it as an example of how the world is better.
Vigo!
Was it
I wanted to give Vigo the benefit of the doubt because I'm like, Mahershala Ali agreed to be in this movie. I like Mahershala Ali. Surely Viggo Mortensen's a little more woke than just this movie.
Mahershala Ali had to speak very carefully about a lot of the people involved in this movie by like saying that what they have done was explicitly wrong, but that he believes in forgiveness and people learning from their mistakes. He had to do that message so many times
Why
over.
does he have to do that?
the writer, Tony's son, is a Trump supporter?
Yeah, he tweeted at Trump a reply and was like, "You were right. I saw the Muslims cheering on 9/11."
That-
Mahershala Ali's
Oh!
The writer.
A bunch of Twitter makes sense to me now. Because anytime I saw a Green Book in my feed, I'm like, whoop.
yeah.
So that was him. I saw that tweet a
Yeah,
lot.
The writer.
Oh. Is he the screenwriter too?
Yeah, it was written by Nick Vallelonga, Tony's son, as well as the director and another writer.
Is Nick Vallelonga the one who gave the speech about Carrie Fisher at the end of the Oscars? I'm pretty sure he was, right?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, man. That makes this very juicy. So, I don't think I like the movie. I didn't like the movie, but I like how juicy all of this was.
There's plenty to talk about.
There is. It just hurts.
I just feel like I a little disingenuous because in Joey Hates Movie, I feel like we pride ourselves on being a little more academic. But this is just
I
us.
think we were pretty academic. Here, do you want to talk about something from a production standpoint real quick? How the fuck did they get to film playing piano like that?
Did he actually play piano?
My understanding that I looked this up is that he did a lot of piano training, but there was a body double when they were like doing the actual piano scenes. But Mahershala Ali did a lot of practice with the actual composer who played on set and for the movie, who's like a 26-year-old dude. It's really cool.
Oh, wow.
He's like super young and like he is like a virtuoso.
That's really cool.
And he's also a black man.
Oh, cool.
So that's why he can be a body double, compose the soundtrack of the movie, and he like wrote a lot of the music like by ear. Like there wasn't
Oh, that's
music
dope.
for it, so he just like rewrote it. He rewrote the score while teaching Mahershala Ali.
That's pretty cool.
So while Mahershala Ali was not playing in those scenes because that would be insane for anyone to do who isn't a piano god. The parts where you don't see his hands, he is, fake playing and all the mannerisms he did like a crazy job nailing, which is really cool to see. But I was just so interested in the production of how they got it to look like Mahershala was playing the piano.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I tried to watch specifically for that and I couldn't spot it, so well done.
But aside from that,
What else? Is there anything else that's like? Is there anything good about this?
I thought it looked
white-
nice. I liked the color palette. I thought some of it was shot well.
Yeah, I thought like the colors would look good. Yeah. Colors look good. But like, there's nothing particularly cinematic about the movie to me. Like, I think the
No.
only thing that stood out to me was the kind of tracking shot when they're on the highway. I was like, oh, that looks kind of cool. But there's nothing about this movie that told me this story needed to be told through the language of cinema. And I think that that's one thing that Oscar bait movies fail to do 9 times out of 10. There's no visual storytelling here.
There were a handful of props that weren't period accurate that I noticed.
Like, what was it? Was there anything juicy?
All the kids are wearing brand new Levi's with like modern 2018 tags.
Ah, dang.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a big oversight. Oh, Coral, say one thing nice about the Green Book.
I just said I thought the colors were nice.
Oh.
I thought I like Linda Cardellini and things. She's great.
Joey, say a nice thing about the Green Book.
Of course, the white man gets rewarded for learning to be okay. Fuck, damn it, I messed up.
Marshall, he was a decent actor.
Yeah, Marshall, he's a decent
There
actor.
you go.
He
Yeah.
had good haircuts.
I like his suits in the movie.
In good suit.
He has good taste. A little extravagant for my taste, but I like it. That's fine.
Your new thing is wearing collared shirts that don't have a real collar. What are you talking about?
That's different. I'm not posed on a throne. But that was Green Book.
And, you know, to keep up with the theme of me ranking movies, as we all, you unanimously don't like the movie.
Dude, I'm very curious where you're gonna put Green Book.
What do you mean? This might put me in some hot water.
Oh no!
I liked it more than Jurassic Park.
No. That hurts.
Why?
What?
Why?
I didn't like anything about
You
Jurassic
really
Park.
didn't like Jurassic? Oh, Jesus.
So I feel like, I feel like we've talked about this before, maybe on the podcast, maybe just in personal taste, but there's like, I think scores are like a bell curve where like 0 in the middle is like complete and utter like hatred, but you can go have like a negative score and have it be ironic.
Is that the
So like a 10 is a perfect movie. A negative 10 is a perfectly ironic movie that's bad but like still good, like The Room or something. And a 0 is just a movie of a piece of media of no value.
Are you calling Jurassic Park a 0?
I'm saying Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park's like a 1.
No.
But the Green Book is like a -2.
What? Both of those scores are wild.
I don't understand this rating system. It's broken.
I'll make a diagram. It makes a lot of sense.
I get it, but I don't get it. I assure you. But Coral, tell me we got a better movie on.
Oh, we do. Okay.
What do we
I'm
got?
excited what you're going to make me watch next, girl, because I dreaded this one for a long time. I think that it took us longer to make this episode because none of us wanted to watch the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly. Coming up, I chose Fargo by the Coen brothers. I've heard you express interest in the Coen brothers before. You like the Fargo TV series. So I think this is a pretty safe bet.
I think the Fargo TV series is one of my favorite TV series, period. I'd probably put it in my top 5. And I've never seen the movie Fargo.
Great.
So this is, if I had to make a exceedingly short list of movies that I, in theory, would have wanted to watch but never have, I think Fargo would be a frontrunner on that list. So this is going to be a good excuse for me to watch that. This is going to be something that I think I'm actually happy to watch for the first time.
Yeah.
I think about everything we've watched, like I've like groaned a little bit, but I think this is the first time where I feel like doing my homework and taking medicine isn't going to be bad. So that's I'm kind of stoked about that.
One thing I wanted to try, Joey, is before we actually have you watch the movie, what do you think the movie Fargo is about?
What?
What do you think Fargo the movie is
Nick,
about?
this is much less fun. We gotta do it on the podcast where I can lie and like you're ruining the element of production.
I think this is more interesting. What do
You're
you think?
ruining the element of production. Fargo's a movie with a bunch of fucking snow, and the snow gets red because people go in wood chippers and shit, and there's like a bag that's buried by the side of the road, and also like, I don't know, there's a wood chipper, right?
Okay, well, that's what you think the movie's about. Interesting.
There's no fucking aliens, right?
I mean, we'll see. I guess we'll find out next time.
Season 3 is the worst season of Fargo.
But that was Joey Hates Movies.
Yeah, we should plug our shit real quick before we like round out proper, I think.
You plug first because I don't know what you're talking about.
What?
Plug your. What do you?
We do. I mean, what do you mean plug our? We do a podcast.
Oh, yeah.
We do a show.
Oh, that's
This
right.
is made possible because of the lovely Cyber Garbage team on Patreon, patreon.com/cybergarbage, which not only funds our Twitch adventure and all of our internet shenanigans, but also allows us to do this podcast. After you stopped, doing the show proper, Coral, a lot of people were like, "Oh man, you're just paywalling Coral." on Patreon to like
This
once,
is it,
twice a
guys.
month. And,
This
you know,
is where you get your dose of coral.
Yep.
and I wanted to make a joke about that, but I was just like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. But
should go
seriously,
get ramen.
patreon.com/cybergarbage is what makes all of this possible, and our Twitch, so twitch.tv/cybergarbage. I know that nearly 100% of people who are listening to this watch that, but I genuinely believe that at some point in 2019, someone will listen to this podcast who did not come from the current community or Cyber Garbage on Twitch.
And they're going to discover Cyber Garbage via Joey Hates Movies.
Yeah, I did just update today. It was long overdue, but I fixed a lot of our problems with editing episodes. Nick did edit the episodes, not me, but like we fixed our podcast uploads, so you can get Joey Hates Movies and our other podcast, Garbage Game Club, anywhere you get podcasts now, which is really cool. And we said this last time, but I want to reiterate: leave a 5-star review on iTunes and leave a comment with what your least favorite movie is, and the next time on the podcast we'll read one of them.
Ooh, how juicy. And I think after Fargo, we're probably going to do... We doing the
A Patreon fan voted movie, because
Yeah.
what we do, we have like a rotation here. We're people who function best on a schedule. A schedule-like structure-ish. So, normally Coral picks a movie, Nick picks a movie, Patreon picks a movie. And really, that means that this movie that we should have been doing right now would have been picked by Patreon, but
It was picked by the Academy.
it was picked
Yeah.
by the Academy.
and whether you like it or not, it won.
Yeah. Sorry. You should become a voting member and change that. But what you can immediately do is affect the podcast after Fargo. So Coral picked Fargo because we didn't get to have a fan vote up before this went live. But now we're announcing that later this week we are going to put a poll on Patreon, patreon.com/cybergarbage, which will be, we'll give you some options for the movie after Fargo, which y'all will be picking. And then we'll get back to, Nick will pick the movie after that. And then, we'll fix the schedule. And then eventually the Oscars will come back around and it'll fuck everything up again. We've got a lot of time for that. So we're gonna get back to it.
It's a lot of movies between now and then.
Oh, man. I mean, if we do like one a month conservatively, that's like 12 a year. I bet we'll probably get like 14 or 15.
That's like a 200% increase in your
It
movie
is
viewing.
so much. But thanks everybody for hanging out. I know Coral hasn't been in the house in like a month, so
Yeah.
it's it still smells.
Yeah, I forgot about the smell. But now I get to take it with me.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Joey Hates Movies. Until next time. Killing me. You're killing me, Larry.
I keep allergy pills on the counter.
Do you?
Yeah, the one
Ah.
with the blue cap. You can have them.
No, that feels wrong.
Why?
Because they're not mine.
I just said you can have them.
You didn't say that. You said they were on the counter.
You can have them. They're from Costco. They have a lot.
Okay, good
Do
to
you take
know.
allergy pills, Coral?
Not in California. Allergies in Georgia, much, much worse.
Is
Really?
that because you're like allergic to pollen?
Yeah, the pollen count in spring in Georgia is absolutely insane.
Does that mean does Georgia do the thing where like there's so much pollen when it rains for the first time, like the ground gets yellow?
Yeah,
Oh,
your
that's
car's
gross.
yellow, everything. Yeah, it's
That's real
disgusting.
gross.
That's disgusting.
Does it bother you? Like, look visually? Or
Not
you like,
really.
whatever?
It just feels so terrible.
So when I was in Florida, I had the best allergies of my life, best being the least impactful. And I think because it was like so humid that a lot of stuff was just pulled out of the air or like drugged down. Were you better in Florida?
Yeah, but I also lived in an area of Florida where there just wasn't a lot of nature. So allergies. The worst allergies I had were actually in London, where they didn't seem that bad, but the way they affected me, like I just couldn't breathe. Like I felt like my lungs were collapsing, and that's never happened before.
Anytime someone describes Florida to me, it sounds more and more like a dystopic wasteland, like Mad Max, or like there's no nature. It's just concrete jungle, man.
You ever
The
been?
No, I've never been to Florida.
the nature that is in Florida is pretty special, though.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, it's like one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on the planet.
But they got crazy things in the water, like weird snakes and alligators and crocodiles. Or
Yeah, you
something.
can't touch any ponds, and most people will kill you. But you know,
I
And then
feel
there's the
like-
hurricanes.
I feel like the most
The
wild people
monsoons.
are either from Ohio or Florida. Like those are the most colorful people you'll ever meet in your life.
I think there are two different types of colorful. Like when I think Ohio, I mean, I'm obviously colored to think like Jason. It's like someone who,
Wasn't Charles Manson also from Ohio?
yeah,
Yeah.
like people who like have seen some shit and have done some shit. But Florida just makes me think of like,
I think of Willem Dafoe from the Florida Project.
Oh,
I think Florida people might be able to function better in a general society, but are either like slightly crazy or dumber. People drove bad in Florida.
It just seems like an angrier LA.
yeah.
Oh, you know, what? I think part of the thing is that like the age bracket just skews older there too.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's where everyone goes to retire. right?
I'm definitely a little ageist. I'm coming out of this podcast. Everybody is as ageist. Is that okay?
What? Wait, you're ageist?
Yeah, I'm ageist. Is that a problem? Am I now hashtag problematic?
Are you
in
judging
2019?
people because of their age? Or are you just saying that older people are in Florida?